Hello, everyone. It's Larry Johnson, your host for A Principal's Voices. And I'm delighted to be able to have a conversation today with Jake Rodgers, who is Pinecrest Academy head in North Georgia. That's just right outside of Atlanta. It's a preparatory Catholic school. And I want to find out all about what he's doing and what he plans to do. So, welcome, Jake.
Thank you, Larry. Delighted to be here.
Okay. Well, since it's near the end of the school year, you must have gotten through it pretty well because I don't see too many stress marks there, Jake.
That is so kind of you to say. Yeah, I think I managed to get through without adding any more gray hairs to the side of my head. So
Hmm.
I think we're doing good. Things are looking good. And
Now
the
you're
summer,
go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Well, it
Yeah.
now you go from kindergarten through full college prep, correct?
Yes. Well, pre-K 3 all the way through 12th grade. So we had our high school graduation ceremony on Saturday. It was absolutely beautiful. And next fall, we'll be welcoming a whole new group of 3-year-olds to campus. So we kind of see kids grow up on our campus. It's a really beautiful model and a great community to be part of.
Hmm. What would you say? I mean, what percentage of the student body would be what I would call full lifers, 3 to 18? How many go all the way through?
You know, it's a really high percentage. I mean, every year, our re-enrollment rate's going to be above 90%. Usually
That's
92,
incredible.
93. Yeah, it's a good percentage. It's really impactful to hear those stories. Like during our graduation ceremony, we because we're a small school and we have such an intimate setting, we talk about every single kid, and you hear these stories of when they were in kindergarten at the school and how they still, a particular teacher in the lower school really changed their life and made them who they are today. Um, so yeah, it's a beautiful way. It's a beautiful way to, again, to kind of provide an environment for kids where they can grow up and kind of have that village effect of a small community that just knows everybody and sees the best in each of the students. So very special thing to be part of.
That kind of continuity you don't see very often, and that is a testament to the way you conduct your education. It has to be.
No, that's a great point. I mean, I was just reflecting on that this weekend. If a kid is at a school for 15 years, 13 years, 10 years, whatever the case may be, how often are we in jobs that long? How often do we live in cities that long in this modern world? It's kind of an anchor point for the rest of their life to have this foundation of continuity.
Hmm.
Where they're feeling that love and support of the community behind them. It's such a great gift to give the next generation.
Now, this is a day school, correct?
Yes, day school,
And it is co-ed.
co-ed. Yep.
Yeah. Um, and I'm kind of diverting here for a minute because it's just a question I want to get an answer to. That's one of
Okay.
the beauties of being the host. I can ask off the topic questions, and that is, what are your thoughts? We'd have to do a theological, philosophical treatise, but what are your thoughts of single sex versus co-ed education?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, there are advantages. There are advantages and disadvantages to both.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And actually, Pinecrest at the early stages of its development uh, was initially established to be two single sex schools in one, so to speak.
Oh, okay. So there would
So
be a girls' school and a boys' school.
there was a girls' school and a boys' school. They were across campus from one another. And several of the teachers and administrators who were there at the time, I mean, the last vestige of that was sunsetted right around 2018, 19-ish.
Oh,
So we
that's
still have a lot of people who have seen both models
yeah.
at work. It's interesting. Not anecdotally, not very many want to go back to that, but it's not because the single gender education isn't a good thing. It's just that having them both on the same campus is not as practical as practical of a theory as it might get.
Well,
Um,
I was thinking, is that far enough? Is that enough separation there? That's what I was thinking
yeah,
when you told me that.
yes,
Uh,
absolutely. And even you want to hire, just from a hiring standpoint, teaching a whole group of boys and a whole group of girls is a little bit different, and some
mm,
personalities might be better with one or the other.
Yes.
And often you need them to be able to teach both. So that's difficult. So it wasn't really a sustainable model, but and I don't know, there's pros and cons to each for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just curious what your thoughts were on that because, well, my oldest daughter at one point we considered a convent school for her, all girls,
Yeah.
um, and mainly because she was being a little bit difficult, and there was another option that was co-ed, but more relaxed,
Yeah.
here's why I said to her, I said, Mary, you've got a choice.
Mm.
You can go to Houghton Academy, which was the co-ed school. It was boarding and day, or Sister Godzilla is waiting. And, and it was
Was that the
run.
actual name?
No, that was actually, but I mean, what I'm saying is this was a serious convent school with
Yeah.
serious nuns. And she got the message, I mean, do you want
Yeah.
to be like, you want a little more freedom? This is what you want. I mean, they had very good
Yeah.
outcomes. I would feel
Yeah.
very
Well,
comfortable having her there.
I
Uh,
hear that a lot with single gender schools. I have not had the experience of working in one, but especially for young ladies, that it builds a sense of confidence in them,
oh, it
for
does.
sure.
It does, and they're removed from a lot of those societal pressures that make
Yes.
young women be very insecure, or they
Yes.
feel they have to give in to whatever. I'm a
Yes.
dad. And that's a concern to me. And I
Yeah.
so Houghton was a good option, or this other one was, and I'd have been happy with either one. And
Right.
I'm not Catholic, but I like go to
Right.
fine, dear, go to mass. That's great with me. You're there. And
Sure.
I knew that she would come out with a Christian education, and she'd come out there with a quality academic education at the same
Mhm.
time. And
Yeah.
I was perfectly happy with that. So I'm just curious what your thoughts were. Um,
Yeah. And
uh,
every kid's a little bit different. I mean, that's the beauty of a small setting
mhm,
for school, is that you really get to in on the individual.
yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, for your daughter, maybe that was the right option, but different kid might need a different setting. So
Yeah. Well, I gave her the single sex option mainly to shock the what out of her. Like, listen,
yeah,
dear, there, it's up to you. You tell me what you want to do here. Um,
yeah,
so, what's the total enrollment there?
close to 600 students, and
Okay.
our graduating class on Saturday was about 55.
So it
55.
is a very intimate setting. It
Yeah,
really
yeah,
is.
exactly,
Um,
exactly.
and so your classes have to be relatively small as well, then.
Yes, we're in a sweet spot of, we're large enough to offer, like we have 13 varsity sports, for example, in our high school.
Wow.
Um, there's all sorts of opportunities that we can offer these kids to grow in their leadership skills, from student government to you name it. But we're also small enough to really, like I said, get to know them as individuals. As a parent, I always think that's the piece that I most want, is that third adult voice in my child's
Mm,
life, who sees the potential in them and is in their corner. That when we're at our best, that's really our value.
yeah. Well, here again, I'm going to reference my age. I remember the Latin phrase "in loco parentis,"
Yeah.
where you were the third option. You see.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
um, tell me a little bit about yourself, Jake. I mean, how does one become the head of Pinecrest? How does that happen?
Oh, Larry, well, I can tell you, it certainly wasn't something that I set out in life with this master plan to say, I'm going to have this job at this time by this age. It's more just an issue, a matter of, I would give following God's leading, God's guidance in my life, one sort of breadcrumb at a time along the trail, has brought me here. Now, I had some preparation for this role. My father was a head of school at a K-12 school in East Texas, and my mom was an English teacher and a college counselor and a tennis coach. And so I grew up on a K-12 independent school campus. And reflecting back, while I never thought that I would follow in their footsteps in any
Mm,
respect, or when it came to a career, I did have an apprenticeship was being trained for this type of role, if you will, long before I recognized it was my own path. So grateful for that. And yeah, long process, Larry. I mean, that
Okay.
brought me here.
Well, you said something that I think is very telling, and I want to make sure we emphasize that. Um, Life is what happens while you make your plans. And if you're seeking God's guidance, He generally doesn't give you the master plan in one big swoosh. It's one piece at a time, one piece at a time, and that often that involves, especially in my own life, it involves what we might consider painful experiences at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
but they have a bigger piece of what's coming later. It's not
Yeah.
all just one big ascending staircase, that there may be
Yes.
this or this or this or this. And you had the example from your dad, and of course even from your mom. um, and of course you could have gone the other way, like, no way and hell am I going to be a part of this thing, I'm out of here. So
Yeah.
you could have gone the other way, but you didn't.
Yeah.
um, so now you taught school, obviously, before you got into administration, correct?
Yes.
And what
Yes.
was your subject?
I was an English teacher,
Yeah,
mainly high school. I've taught every grade from 6 to 12, but mainly high school, junior level English, AP composition.
yeah, you look
That's kind
like
of
an
my deal.
English teacher, Jake. You look like one. All right. I, I, my eighth grade English teacher was a lady, and she taught me how to write directively. For instance, her standard thing was you do a little essay she'd say, "Okay, now come back and do it in half as many words." And
Yes.
again, in half as many words, in half as many words. It just forces you to compress to get the clarity. Um,
Yes.
I presume you're teaching your students how to read there, like read and write. Okay. Um, because I read in the Wall Street Journal not too long ago that perhaps that they don't think anyone under the age of 30 knows how to read a book anymore. And these are people who are college students.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your social what's your electronic policy using one of these things?
Yeah. No. Well, ideally, we don't want the technology to dominate our lives.
Mm-hmm.
That you really one of the most important technological skills to give students is the skill not to use the device, so that they won't be used by the device. And
I
so
love that.
providing, there's a degree of which we're providing something that is truly timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Reading, writing, public speaking. I can attest to you that I, at least at Pinecrest, our kids can read books. They're reading Shakespeare, they're reading
Good.
Dante. I mean, a lot of the classics are very much well and alive here on campus. But at the same time, we're to be in the world and not of the world, and I do believe that technological engagement
Mm-hmm.
is really important. That we teach them how to do that healthily, in a healthy way and responsibly, too. So, being in the world but not of the world, what does that look like at every age and stage of their development is going to be a little different, for sure. But
Okay.
yeah, we can't let the cell phones dominate our lives. That's for certain.
When I walk around, I'm amazed. I mean, we've had these things for only about 20 years. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
first smartphone came out in 2007, and half of it didn't work, and that was the
Yeah.
iPhone with with
Yes.
uh, with Jobs. When he had that rollout. I don't know if you've seen any videos of it. The thing didn't work hardly at all. I mean, he was really up there, sort of, faking it out. The things to come kind of thing. But
Yeah.
today, I mean, you just people walking around with their. I mean, stepping off street corners, looking at this, or walking, looking at this. And they're so
Yeah.
just sucked into it. So, but I wanted to ask you, you are a Catholic school. You're a Christian school that you have put your stake in the ground. And you
Yeah.
mentioned about you want to be in the world, but not of the world. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I presume you have chapel requirements and that sort of thing. But tell me, how does that work itself out in the curriculum? How does that in the life of these students? How do you grow them to be Christian young people who are acting in the world but not of the world?
Yeah. Well, I mean, our mission statement for our school is to form Christian leaders who will transform society.
Mm-hmm.
We often remark it's not form Christian leaders to run away from society, right? To transform, to be actively engaged, to be agents of good. So that's our general orientation. And then the way in which we do that, we have what we call our educational model. We say there's 4 pillars to the education that we're providing. And the intellectual pillar is just one of those. That's, and that's not just about the academics or the transcripts. I mean, the intellectual pillar itself goes deeper than sometimes as a culture we define these things.
Yes.
There's so many more important things than whether my kid got into Georgia Tech or UNC or Duke in life. Lifelong curiosity, the pursuit of wisdom, so much more eternal than college acceptances, as proud as we are of our college prep record. Don't get me wrong. That's one pillar of our education, though. So we focus on that, but then we also recognize that in order to anchor our kids in something truly good, beautiful, that we need to provide apostolic opportunities where they are going out and serving their community as the hands and feet of Christ. We need to provide them with a spiritual anchor. That's our spiritual formation. Every kid at our school, we want them to know that they have inherent dignity because they are made in God's image.
Yes.
And that God doesn't make mistakes. What a great resource for their life. I mean, how many curveballs does life throw us? And to have those faith resources, to have learned how to pray, I mean, that is a timeless gift.
Yes.
And then the last pillar of our formation is what we call human formation, which is about character education, virtues. It's about collaboration, problem solving, leadership skills, public speaking, all of those qualities that would make for an excellent and a successful person in the marketplace. That's or in life in more general terms. That's what we're going for with that pillar. And to me, to answer your question, it's about balancing the 4. That if we are all spirituality, but we're not a great academic institution, we're out of whack. And if at the same time we're really strong on the academics, but we're not recognizing the fact that every kid who steps in our classroom has a soul, that they come with emotional needs, again, we're out of whack. So it's really the balance of the 4 pillars that leads to a firm foundation in life. I think if you give them that type of well, again, forgive the well-worn metaphor here, but a firm foundation on which to build, the rest of their life is just constructing on top of that, so to speak. So, we want to anchor them in something good.
Okay. I obviously, you run into situations that are outside the norm or outside what you expect. How do you handle a child that's not, I don't want to say not fitting in, because that's not what I'm trying to say, but someone, a boy or a girl who obviously is not making the kind of progress academically, emotionally, or spiritually that you would like them to make? What sort of allowances, what sort of resources do you have to sort of keep them, do some course correction or keep them from falling off the edge?
That's a great question. The first thing is the luxury of I personally know almost every one of the kids on our campus.
Well, that helps.
By name, just seeing them. How many kids fall through the cracks because they're not seen? And I don't interface with them near as much as their teachers or their coaches or even the building level administrators. So the first thing is seeing them so that we notice, are they heading in the right direction? Are there trends that are concerning us? The second thing is, before the school year starts, we pray for every single child by name who's enrolled in the school. Like, we divide our teachers into teams. And I don't mean this in a saccharine or sort of a cheesy way, but, C.S. Lewis said that prayer doesn't change God, it changes us.
Yes, it does.
I do believe that when you enter a school year through that lens and that framework, as if this was my own child, like, how would I want my child treated? If we can learn to see each one of our students with those eyes, whether it's through prayer or whatnot, that is huge, because then suddenly it's not about providing consequences if a kid, doesn't fit in, or, it's really about holding forth what's good and it's doing everything we can to inspire them to reach for it. So it's just a different framework of how we look at the kid. And then we have lots of supports, of course, whether it's learning support for those who really want to get on grade level, or, whether it's more behavioral support where we come up with a plan of, hey, we're noticing this. In the middle school, Larry, you get a kick out of this. Everybody remembers the joy of middle school, the middle school years. We have the kids make their own sort of business plan for their soul, if you will. Like it's like that's not what we call it. It's a formation plan. And with their mentor teacher, they come up with a series of SMART goals for, hey, I'm going to be more charitable. I'm going to set a SMART goal where I sit by the other kid at lunch, every lunchroom, just to provide a more welcoming environment. Or I'm going to work on punctuality to class, But they set those goals at the beginning of the year. And then when we have the parent teacher conferences, the kids are leading the goals and they're presenting, how they did. And the parents are sitting there listening and the teachers are there. And, so it's just a whole child framework, I guess, is what I'm getting after. And we try to see the kids and we try to treat them as if they're our own. And it's not rocket science. It's just about love and effort.
That's true. That's true. I'm just enjoying listening to this, Jake. I wish I was younger. I might want to go to your school. I mean, you've done a really great thing here. Now with an 80 or 90% retention rate from start to finish in terms of a student entering at 3, two things I want to go into. First of all, how does someone who's not been to your school until they're in the 8th grade, how do they manage? How do they fit in? Is it just too closed for them at that point, or are there ways of bringing them in with the community?
Yes, that's a great question. We especially at entry points, like going here in Georgia, middle school starts at 6th grade, so 6th, 7th, and 8th. We'll get an influx of students into middle school that 6th grade year. We get an influx of students into high school.
Yeah.
So that happens all the time. Actually, there's kind of an advantage. I say you have instant social capital if you're new at the school, because a lot of the kids have been together since pre-K.
Oh,
So
okay.
they're very excited when a new friend comes along. But no, it's a very welcoming place. And we do some things to ensure that they feel welcomed. If you have a rising kindergartner, for example, there's class parties where your kids will meet the other kids. If you're going into high school, we've assigned you an ambassador, and you met that person over the summer, so that when you show up day one, you at least know one person in the building. So we make every effort to make sure people feel very loved and seen on their first day. And I find that it's not a closed system. People embrace new families with open arms.
Okay. I'm going to shift to something that's a little more institutional, and that is, you're a day school, so you're not boarding, but yet you have all this continuity of students. So what kind of alumni activities do you do? I mean, it's just high school, but is there anything that you do?
Yes. Well, so the school was started in 1993.
Oh, so it's still pretty young. Yeah.
It's a pretty young school. Yeah. I mentioned this, our alumni and the high school was started later. This was the 19th, last Saturday was the 19th graduating class at the school.
Okay.
So the alumni, what's interesting is we're seeing this wave of them putting their kids back in the school. So, last few years, we've seen a lot of, alumni children coming through. We've hired a fair number of alumni teachers. What we find is, number one, they get our mission because they were formed in it themselves.
Yeah.
Number two, they're academically well prepared to be great teachers too. So that's been a big thing.
It says something that you hire your own product. That says a lot.
Fair, yeah, that's a fair point. I would worry if we couldn't hire alumni. For sure.
Well, I'm coming out from my own perspective. I mean, my high school opened in 1936. So you can see, they've trained generations of young people, very different. So what is it you'd like to tell me that I haven't asked you?
Oh, wow. Such a great open-ended question there, Larry. I mean,
whatever you'd like to say.
any number of directions about with that. You work with a lot of nonprofits,
Mm-hmm.
and there's always a tension, especially in a school such as ours, with a 30-year history behind it. And we've got a great legacy of excellence, but we're a relatively young institution. You're always trying to balance kind of mission and then also just kind of running, if you will, a business, like no money, no
Mm-hmm.
mission,
That's right.
sort of mindset. So I was really kind of struck by some of the 8 principles that you mentioned. And I was actually going to turn the question back on you to say, could you tell us a little bit more about, um, what is it in the 8 principles that empowers nonprofits such as ours that have to balance those two things, sincerity of mission and also, paying salaries and keeping, kind of running the school, if you will. What's the most powerful of the principles? Um,
Well, the most powerful principle is principle one, and that's
mhm,
donors or investors are the drivers.
mhm,
I asked nonprofits, so who are your customers? Now, in your case, it's a little different, but not your customers are really your investors. They're not your
mm,
students. The students are the beneficiaries. Now, of
mhm.
course, your parents are paying tuition,
Sure.
and in that regard, they are a customer. All right.
Yeah.
But the investors are investing their funds because they want to see something happen, usually in their own lives, Jake. As
Mm,
opposed, I mean, they're giving through you, not
yeah.
to you. And
Yes.
when you can have a culture in your school that that recognizes that everyone knows the role they play, and that doesn't mean
Mm,
it's an outsized role, but it's a very important role. And
yeah.
I like to say that when you can give your investors an experience or experiences they cannot purchase, there's no price on them. They will be dying unloyal to you because it's so
Mm,
unusual, so rare. I mean,
mm,
if you put it in the purely commercial world, that's exactly what the Ritz Carlton Hotel has done. They have
yeah.
created a culture that's inside that hotel chain that treats their guests so well that they
Mhm.
can't buy that. They can't go someplace and purchase that, you see.
Right.
And so that's why it's number one always. I mean,
Yeah.
their facilities aren't any better than Westin or the other top end
Yeah.
hotels. No, it's the
Yeah.
way they treat their guests. So in your case, it's the way you would treat your
Yeah.
investors. How can and
Well,
and that is go ahead.
well,
So
I
that
was going to say,
go ahead.
um, well, the piece you mentioned about culture really resonates because, you know, really that is what a school is.
Yeah, it's one way or the other, for
We're
good or
we're a
ill.
culture of learning. We're a culture of collegiality. We're a culture of collaboration. Um, we the the thing that's so powerful to me is that pretty much every family that comes to us on an admissions tour, with a few exceptions, they've been referred by other families. And I think it's that cultural piece where if you have a clear mission, then that brings the right people and allows you to develop the right programs that then lead to the success that you might want in terms of
Hmm.
metrics. But it's about having the right order of the priorities, and that mission, that culture is so important there.
Excuse me. Um, sometimes donors will surprise you.
Mm-hmm.
When you think they're investing in one thing, they're really investing in something totally different. And so
Mm,
it's very important to understand who they are
yeah,
and what is it they're seeking, but
yeah,
always with a service forward approach. Um,
mm,
and I see, well, your faith based community, I'm a faith based individual. You're really giving people an opportunity to fulfill God's calling on their lives with their resources. That's what you're
yeah,
really doing. You're not asking for money. You're not funding the school. That's a byproduct. That's a
right,
byproduct of the main thing. And so that if you
yeah,
focus on what the individual needs to do to serve God's calling in their life, well, a couple
yeah,
of things will happen. You will have an organization worth giving to. You will
yeah,
attract support. You won't have to chase it. You really won't have
Yeah.
to chase it. And I
Yeah.
mean, there's certain mechanics and that sort of thing that are involved, but so many nonprofits, they're chasing support. They are looking for it everywhere. They are going through all these techniques and technology and everything else. I think what's the
Yeah.
number that these CRMs have gotten so sophisticated? I think it's like the average nonprofit uses about 20% of the features of the CRM they buy. Um,
I believe that. Yeah.
yeah. I like to tell people that these tech companies are selling them Ferraris, and what they really need is a lawnmower. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's and they're chasing it rather than inviting it.
Yeah.
In my own career, when I worked with donors directly, which I've had the beauty of doing many years, I would often ask them, so Jake, what is it you really want to accomplish?
Mm.
That's a really open-ended question. And I just
Mm-hmm.
listen. And it's just an
Mm.
open, I don't have an agenda. I'm just there listening to who they are,
Yeah.
what they want to do, and perhaps I can find a linkage that would help
I,
them realize that.
it's I'm just struck with a little bit of a, if you'll forgive, a philosophical reflection here. But when I was describing our school, what I'm really talking about is often we see education as this transaction, like it's a commodity.
Yes.
And what we're trying to achieve with our mission, and there's so many other schools that are doing the same, is transformation, right? That we're looking at the whole
Mm-hmm.
child. And there are transactions that happen along the way that are really important. If a student fulfills the requirement for the test, they get the grade that they deserve as a
That's right.
transactional point. But it was really about that transformation of the learning process, the deeper thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're talking about donor engagement here, really what I'm hearing is just treat people, see the humanity in others, see the dignity in others.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this was kind of we have at graduation, we have like four speakers. They're really all students. Like, I'll say a few remarks, but the highlight of it by far are the student speeches. And one of them really talked about the ability to walk out into the world and to see the dignity in others as just such a lost skill. Just slowing down and give somebody your undivided attention. Learn names, listen to the stories about people's family. Like, what a great gift to the world. And that's really what you're describing, as I hear it. Right? Am I not right there?
Yes, it is. It is. And perhaps the other thing that we run into a lot of the principals is um, the number one barrier to a person being a good fundraiser is having a
Mm-hmm.
dysfunctional view of money. And you see this a lot in faith-based communities where money is viewed as either it's sort of it's not quite it's a little radioactive, and if you got too much of it, you really can't be all that godly, and da 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 da. Of course, they bring up, oh, the classic one is the biblical reference of the rich young ruler. Well, if you know the background of what's going on there, Jesus isn't requiring him because he's rich that's a condition of faith, that he was holding on to it far too well. He
Yeah,
couldn't
too
let he
tightly.
couldn't let go of
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
because Jesus had a lot of wealthy friends, and he was funded primarily by wealthy women, by the way,
Yeah.
who were, so it wasn't so much the wealth, it was his attachment to it that was the issue.
Yes.
And then we
Yeah.
run into situations where they have, people in faith-based communities, especially, they have this sort of, well, if you're rich, how can you be godly? And what are you doing? And, you've seen
Yeah.
that as well as I've seen it. And that's something that is a real obstacle. The training platform that we actually have an exercise that measures your cynicism with regard to money. And
Huh.
it shocks a lot of people, how cynical you are when it comes to money.
Interesting.
People in this country, Jake,
Yeah.
will share their sex lives with you before they'll share their finances with you.
Uh,
Uh, I mean, that tells you what a taboo subject it is. Um,
yeah.
and then it's having that culture so that
Yeah.
everyone in your organization knows how to engage with a
Yeah.
prospective investor,
Yeah.
and not being afraid of that,
Yeah.
and realizing it's not about the money at all. No.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's another great point. I know you actually met Henry Nouwen, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly.
He was my mentor in seminary. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, his
Yeah.
his book, Spirituality of Fundraising, so powerful.
It is.
And what? what that book really opened up for me were two things. One is that it's never just money.
It's never money. No.
That people, what we're talking about is the investment of people's time.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you go out into the world to make a living and you're successfully rewarded, every hour I spend at work is an hour I'm not with my kids. It's an hour that, I've made conscious choices. And so to give that money, to give that back to an institution or to an organization is a deeply personal choice.
Yes,
But the other side of it is it's an invitation to worship.
Yes,
it's an
is.
invitation to not be attached to the things of this world or to give back. And, I heard those speeches again, we're just coming right off the heels of graduation. So I'm still riding this sort of cloud nine of this beautiful ceremony and just being reminded of why we do what we do. And, in education, you don't always get to see the results as clearly as you do in other industries. So when you hear it come from the mouths of the students themselves, it is such a powerful testimony. And as I'm listening to that, I'm thinking about that graduating class and what percentage of them were on scholarship or financial aid. I think, well, they wouldn't have had this opportunity if it weren't for that. So
that's right. That's right.
It's a real tangible means to transform lives and do a lot of good in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to the extent that we recognize that it's personal, again, I think because it's about the transformation of the donor too. It's about the transformation of the institution. I mean, I have been inspired so much by the generosity of people who have given to us. It has made me want to do more for the students and the teachers who I get to work alongside each and every day.
Oh, yeah. Investors is what I like to call donors. They want your time. They want your time. They want you to spend time with them. Go ahead.
We like to use the word. No, I think that's a great word. We often use the word mission invested families.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't care for the word mission fit because I think there's a little bit of judgment in that.
Yes.
There's a connotation there I'm not super comfortable with. But mission invested speaks to somebody's level of commitment and their willingness to buy in, as a stakeholder. So I think it's a great term, investor.
I run into this all the time where, and it applies to all institutions, all organizations, but I see it more in faith-based groups where your particular cause, you can have overlap, and there'll be people that will support you in your cause, but they don't fit your entire profile. So they'll want to exclude those people because they don't fit the whole profile.
Yes.
And I'm going, wait a minute. You need to build bridges with people. You need to meet people where they are. It's one thing that I know about the scripture. Jesus met people where he found them. He didn't precondition anything. It's like, you come to me as you are. We'll discuss the rest later. All right. That was his whole approach. Of course, that's one of the things that got him in such hot water, because he would do that. I like to say, the two biggest criticisms leveled against Jesus when he was on this earth were he hung around the wrong kind of people and he went to way too many prop parties. All right.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
But so that's what I'd like to tell people is you look at where you can have a commonality. Look at where they can support you. And they will. And you don't have to compromise yourself or compromise them. In fact, it's bringing people together. And of course, that's what Nowlan would say also.
Right.
The same thing as well. Thank you for bringing that up, Jake. Thank you. I appreciate that. Because I'm pretty passionate about what I do and why I do it. And beside the fact that you get better financial results doing it this way too, but that's kind of beside the point for me.
Sure.
So, well, thank you for doing this. We're going to have another one of these, and the reason I'm going to kind of cut it off right here, but we're going to do this again if you're willing. Okay. And next time I want to get more into the flavor of the school and the supporters and the various tiers of what you do. I want to get more details because I'm pretty intrigued by what you just told me this morning. You come across, well, now you taught English at this school or somewhere else?
No, I taught at other schools. However, I am I've been co-teaching a little Christian leadership practicum, like a senior capstone course. So I get a
Okay.
little bit of my teaching bug or my teaching fix that I
Okay.
need. Um,
All right.
but yeah, yeah, I,
I,
I
I
do love teaching.
I really love and I'm sure you're representative of the school in that you're a Christian school with an open heart that tries not to
Mm,
judge people, and
mm,
that's that's what our Lord wanted. That's how
mm,
he lived his life. And he was misunderstood a lot of times for that too, and also punished for that. But I
mm,
want to say I admire that very much,
mm.
and I'm sure you're doing a good job. And when I make it to Atlanta, which I do occasionally, I'll have to come over and see you for sure, um,
Yeah,
or maybe one of those shadow events or something like that. That'd be nice. Um,
sure.
but well, anyway, we'll do this again very soon. And I want to
Okay.
thank you for your time today.
Likewise, Larry. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. You know, Jake and I have been having a wonderful conversation today. He's the head at Pinecrest Academy in Northern Georgia. And I meant what I said. We're going to do this again because I want to delve more into what makes the school work, what makes it tick. So until then, we thank you for your time and for tuning in today.